Hi, today we will be talking about data collection and privacy. I firmly believe that indiscriminate and unrestricted data collection is the most important thing for our digital economy. Not only that, the concept of privacy has to undergo fundamental changes if we want to realize the fruits of the fourth industrial revolution. Now, it's not only about the success of digital economy that we have to deregulate data collection and data usage for. There are more fundamental and pragmatic issues at play here. For example, how many of you use these devices? I would say all of you, because that's why we are thinking of transitioning into digital economy absolutely. If you didn't have these devices, digital economy wouldn't make any sense. Now, one very simple question: what's the problem with these devices? According to some, I mean those people who hail from the field of AI ethics or those who are on the way to regulate more the data protection and data usage, they say that, and they are not wrong when they are saying this, they are so right about it. They say that these devices, they collect your data, whatever these devices can, and they send that data to different companies, those companies who have control over your device. And who could those companies be? It could be Apple, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Facebook. It could be anybody. So it means that you end up paying for those devices that are used to spy on you by those companies. You gave them the profit. I mean, you paid the price, so they have huge profit margin on top of that. And they are using the devices that they sold you to spy on you. Is how surveillance works. And then they sell the data to other companies, to third parties and to government and things like that. We will get to it. Now, the question is, why our data is sent to those companies using these devices? The normal articulated answer by those companies is this, that the data is used to make sure that there is an improvement in the products and services that are being offered to us through these devices. It could be various apps, it could be various products that we see the advertisements of on our applications and things like that. Now, what's the reason for that? The companies say that by observing our behavior, they realize our preferences. They understand our behavior. And on that basis, not only they are able to make the already existing products and services better, but also they are able to predict our behavior in future. And that's why they can equip themselves with the requirement or with the demand that we might have in future. And in the meantime, they will tailor make the product. It means that they will carve the products and services specifically to our needs and requirements. That's the most basic thing. For example, on YouTube understands your behavior, the kind of videos that you watch, and in the recommendation panel, they are likely to show you those videos that you are more interested in. That's the reason that is given by companies to us. And there is truth in that. They do try to make their services better. But at the same time, the way it all works in reality, the dynamics of it, it tweaks our behavior without us realizing it. You should go to YouTube and you should listen to the interview of Jaron Lanier, the founding father of virtual reality, the interview that he gave to Channel 4 News. I think the news channel is from UK, and he explains that in a very beautiful way. In addition to that, you should read one book by Shoshana Zuboff. The book is called The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. Now, there are two parts, as I just told you. One is the stance of the companies, in which they say that they need to collect more and more data to understand us better, to predict our behavior so that they can make their products and services better for our further demands. And on the other hand, there is a different view that says that the data is being used by those companies in order to change our behavior so that we end up consuming the products that they would want us and not the products that we really need. So it's a way to boost the economy. And this video is not meant for the purpose of discussing the pros and cons of these two arguments. We will do that in some other video. Now, the data is collected, but the question is that the data arises from us. The foundation of data is the consumer who is using those devices, because devices are collecting data of their users, right? So if I have this phone, I am the source of the data. Why should the data go to the company? They have no right over the data. The data should be my property because it comes from me. Now, the next question is, if data is naturally or logically my property because it comes from me, then what allows those companies to collect it from the devices that I use? The answer is an agreement, a legal agreement. Now, you will ask me, what kind of agreement are we talking about? And here is the example. Whenever you download an application on your smartphone, just one example, there are many ways to understand this concept. So whenever you download an application on your smartphone, you have to click on that button, I accept, right? It means that you are giving several permissions to the developer or the people who are trying to commercialize those apps and selling it to us. You are giving them several permissions to have access to your devices that are continuously collecting data about us through various means and ways. Now, the next issue is if you have agreed to those companies and allowed them to collect your data because you clicked on I accept that was given to you at the end of the click wrap agreement before you were downloading some kind of application, then you should not be cribbing about it because you allowed yourself to become part of a contract. It's an agreement, you agreed to it. So you should not be having any problem as far as those companies using your data is concerned. And I would say that there is a problem. This contract, this agreement is not a legal contract. And there are many reasons for that. First one is this, that how many of you have ever read any click wrap agreement? I would say 100%. 100% of the people, they don't read any kind of click wrap agreement. But just to be cautious, I would say 99.9% of you never read any click wrap agreement. So forget about informed consent. You are not even in the position to give consent to any kind of agreement without even understanding what's written in that, without even reading what's written in that. In law, and especially in contracts, there is a legal provision that a person who wants to be a part of a contract has to give informed consent to the provisions or to the stipulations mentioned therein. In this case, forget about understanding the context of the stipulations in the click wrap agreement. You do not even read it. So there is no consent. There is no informed consent at all. So how can you become a party to that? Now, point number 2. Whenever two parties enter into some kind of deliberations in order to negotiate a contract about something, because in this case you are downloading the app, so they are providing the service, you are going to be using that service. So that's why your actions of supposedly reading the terms and conditions of the contract and then clicking yes means that you are still negotiating the whole process or the whole terms and conditions of the contract with them. But whenever you are doing that, those two parties are supposed to be on the same plank when it comes to their respective bargaining powers. They should have equality of some sorts, but in this case, there is no equality as far as the bargaining powers of these two parties to the contract are concerned. Why? Because if you do not say I accept, if you do not click on that button, then you will not be allowed to join that platform. It is excluding you, and there is only one way to be part of that contract, to be part of that application, and that is to say that I accept the terms and conditions. So it's unilateral, it's one way. And that's not the correct thing. The counter argument to my last assertion could be, if you do not like the terms and conditions, just don't click I accept and don't join that application or that online platform. And I would say that it seems very logical when you articulate it like that, but when you understand the whole scenario, it's the most illogical thing ever. And I'll tell you why. Whenever, for example, Facebook, hypothetically, if I'm not on Facebook and I want to join it, I'll open the page, I'll type down my details, and then finally I be awkward and I'll go through their terms and conditions, the agreement. In that case scenario, if I don't like any clause therein, I cannot write to them that please change this clause or let's try to discuss that. I just have one option, that I choose not to join Facebook. But when I'm not joining Facebook, what am I losing? There are more than 2.3 billion people on Facebook. Every organization, every institution, whether public or private, has an account on Facebook. You find more information on Facebook than you find on the websites of those respective entities. If I'm not on Facebook, I'm rendered socially useless. I have no other way. If I want to be relevant socially, if I want to function in a proper way in the social environment, I have to make sure that I join Facebook. There are some exceptions. There are some people who are successful or who are not, but they have chosen not to be a part of those platforms. But we cannot generalize exceptions. Majority of people on this earth who have access to smartphones, they choose to be on those platforms because those platforms have been made socially so relevant that there is no other way for an average human being. They have to either be a part of those online social platforms or anything else, those applications, or they are excluded from that social environment, which is not really a good thing for the personal and mental development of a human being. So there is no other way. Now, please don't misunderstand whatever I just said. I'm not saying that you do not need to download any applications. On the contrary, I'm just saying that the point that I'm trying to make here is this, that you cannot avoid downloading those applications. You cannot avoid being a part of those online social media platforms. You have to do that. There might be many negative sides to doing all these things, but we live in a society and we are forced to follow the footsteps of the majority. So we have to be conformist. We can be different in the same way, but at the same time, we are being like everybody else because that's how it works. So we have to download the applications. We have to be on these social media platforms. In fact, the bigger question is this, that if you have no other way but to be a part of that digital environment, then why do we have gimmicks like this, that you have to click on I accept before you download an application, just to make sure that the companies who are providing us with those apps, they can escape their legal liabilities. In that case, it becomes only a gimmick. It becomes a farce that has no real meaning or no real substance to it. So why do we have these laws in place? For example, GDPR. In order to understand all this, we have to understand first that why do we have law in our society? Why do we have a regulatory framework in place? And the answer is that law performs a function in our society. Law wants to achieve something. And if we cannot perform that function, then the law becomes frivolous. It becomes redundant, and we should not be doing it. We should not have that law in our society if the law is not able to perform the function that it was intended to. And GDPR is one such case. People are required to give their consent before they download app or before they visit any website. And we know that those people have no idea what's going on. They don't even read those things. So that's why the law that regulates the whole scenario becomes redundant. We should not have them in place. We should allow the data to be collected indiscriminately. You could regulate what for the data is used. But as far as collection of data is concerned, this gimmick should be done away with. I remember Chairman of Siemens AG talking at World Economic Forum in 2019, Jim Snabe. He said that consumers have no idea what's going on. And when people have no idea what's going on and they are just giving their consent without even realizing the relevance of it in their lives or in the whole process at least, then it doesn't make any sense to keep on going with that kind of law. And also there are many cases out there in the world that say that companies are still collecting data without any restriction. You look at America, there is no effective data protection law in America, and look at the development it has achieved in the field of AI advancement. Look at China. There might be very strict public administration in China, but at the same time, the laws are subservient to the authoritative regime in China. And that's why they are able to collect as much data as they want. So AI advancement in US and in China are going ahead by leaps and bounds. And I'm not defending the political structuring in the US and China. All I'm saying is this, that European Union is already lagging behind when it comes to AI advancement. And because of these laws in place, like GDPR, they are further restricting their movement ahead on the same path. They should get done with these laws. And why do they need to get done with these laws? Because they need data. We come to our point number 2. Data is not only the most important thing for the success of digital economy, it's the lifeline of digital economy. European Union changed its mission from single market economy to digital single market. They want to make sure that they transition into digital market and they are successful. And they will not be able to do it if they have so many restrictions when it comes to data collection and data usage. The data that is collected should not be used against the people that is collected from, but at the same time, data has to be collected. In fact, data has to be collected indiscriminately and without any restriction if we want to build a platform on which our digital economy will run. Digital economy requires digital connectivity, and at the core of digital economy, we have AI that relies on data. And it becomes very important that we have a mechanism in place that allows every aspect of human life to be digitalized so that that data can be used by every entity or any entity that is working in the field of AI development. Now, that's where the problem lies. What's the problem? The problem is that only few big tech companies are able to collect all the data that they can. And you know the name. If you want to know the name, you should read Amy Webb's book. It says that the big 9 tech companies are either based in US or China. And the book tells you about the names of those big companies. The point that I'm trying to make is this, that only few companies have all the data that arise from us. And that's why in the market that is supposed to be working on democratic principles and there should be competition in that market, there is none. All other companies are struggling to scale up. That's why in the startup scenario today, we have companies who come up with brilliant ideas, but they never want to make it as big as Amazon or Apple or Google because they know that they don't stand any chance because of scaling up effect. And that's why we can expect small companies coming up in the market as startups with these brilliant ideas. But we should not expect that these companies will be able to make it to the top, because not only that these companies will be incapable of making it to the top, but they are expecting to be bought by these big companies that already exist in the global tech landscape. So there is no competition in the market. But the problem is when only the biggest companies are allowed to use our data. That's where the problem lies. Now, the argument is that these companies can have our data because they have built the infrastructure. But at the same time, because of the infrastructure that they have already made in the market and the data that they are collecting, they will be able to reinforce their position in the market, not only the contemporary product sector, but also in various other product sectors that they are conceiving right now that don't already exist but will be there in future. So they are using their competitive advantage in one market to gain substantial position in other markets that don't even exist today, but they will be existing in future, in AI future, or in absolute digital economy. And that's where the problem lies. So I think the governments should not focus on the restrictions or regulations of data collection. They should allow the data to be collected, because without it, our future economy cannot function. As far as privacy issue is concerned, I think the data collected, it cannot be anonymized, because if you do that, then you are not able to cater to the requirement of a particular individual, which is ultimate aim of AI-oriented economy in future. So that's why it's very counterintuitive if we say that we should not go into the details of data when it comes to an individual. We should do that, but at the same time, we should not hold the individual responsible as far as the mainstream conventional implications are concerned, unless they are of criminal nature or of the nature that goes against the systemic fabric of our economic system. Before I go, I really want to reiterate that there is no other way we can collect or use data. The data has to be made available freely without any restrictions, without any regulations, if we want to make sure that in future we have our economy running and becoming successful. At the same time, we should get done with the laws that are there only for decorative purpose and do not serve the real purpose. We don't want our legal framework to be affected by the political vulnerability of the contemporary governments. The laws should be put forth the way they really are and not in some manner that is trying to confuse public, because people are already playing out in real field. They do not want to be subjected to the romanticized versions of articulation about particular laws like GDPR, and privacy should not be a concern, because what we need right now is to make sure that we go ahead on the path of AI advancement so that we can use the power of AI for the benefit of all. And we cannot do it without using the data coming from individuals. Thank you so much.